Let's learn how to use the modals have to, must, and should. These modals can be a little confusing in English because they have many meanings and uses. So let's dive right in. In this video, you're going to learn how to use have to, must, and should for advice and for obligation. So we're going to learn when to use them, when not to use them, and how to use them. So first, a brief introduction to what a modal is and the meanings that modals can have. Some example modals are must, have to, should, can, could, will, and would. You know these words. They're called modals. And their uses, that means their meanings. They're used in a variety of situations. We use them for obligations, advice, for opinions, ability, possibility, promise, etc. So many more. But the good news is modals are very easy to use grammatically. Simply use the modal word like will or can and a base verb. It has one form and there is no change. So there's no third person S. So let's look at a couple of example sentences. You have to go to work. And by the way, it's pronounced have to. You have to go to work today. Have to or have to is the modal and go is the base verb. You should go to work today. You should go to work today. Should is the modal and go is the base verb. They're very easy to use grammatically. No change. First, let's look at modals for advice. All three modals must, have to, and should can be used for giving advice. But do you know what the difference is between them? There is a difference, and they vary in strength of advice. Let's start with should. Should for advice. For example, you should eat less sugar. You'll lose weight. You should. So eating less sugar is my advice. You should eat less sugar. I think it will help you lose weight, but you may or may not want to do it. You have a choice in taking my advice. So should is weaker and more common than the other two. Let's look at another example of should for advice. Remember, should is the weaker modal for advice. So it's more common because advice can be rude and pushy. So it's nicer to use a weaker form. Let's look at this. For example, you should come to the party. It'll be so much fun. It's a good idea, but you may or not want to take the advice. It's up to you, really, because you have a choice. Now let's look at the modals must and have to. Remember, have to is have to. So must and have to for advice is stronger. For example, you must come to the party. It'll be so much fun. So you can hear my excitement in you must come to the party in the emphasis of my sentence. Or you have to come to the party. It'll be so much fun. So must and have to, well, they are stronger because you're more excited about what you're saying. You don't want to give them a choice. There's a little more social pressure in the expression because of your excitement. You must come to the party. You have to come to the party. What about negative advice? Which modal do you use to give negative advice? You should use should in the negative form, as in shouldn't. You cannot use must and you cannot use have to because they have different meanings. That's the problem with modals. They have different meanings in different situations, and that's what makes them hard. So if you use shouldn't for negative advice, that's correct. But you can't use mustn't because mustn't means when it's negative, prohibitive, means you can't do that. And you can't use don't have to because that means not necessary. It means not necessary. You're not obligated to do it. You don't have to do it. So let's look at a sentence using shouldn't for negative advice. For example, you shouldn't date him. Yes, he is handsome, but he isn't a nice guy. You shouldn't date him. Okay, now it's time to look at modals of obligation. There are only two modals of obligation in this video, must and have to, or have to. You cannot use should for obligation. You can use should for advice, but you cannot use the modal should for obligation. Only must and have to are modals of obligation. So let's look at these. These are obligations. That means these are things you cannot choose not to do. That means you have no choice in the matter. It's something you have to do. Let's look at an example sentence. Must. I must get a new job. I can't do this anymore. Or have to. I have to. You see how the pronunciation changes in the sentence. Have to. I have to get a new job. I can't do this anymore. So the meaning is there is no choice. I must change jobs. I will certainly take action to change jobs. But do you think, is there a difference in meaning between these two sentences? Let's look at them again. I must get a new job. I can't do this anymore. I have to get a new job. I can't do this anymore. So do you think there's a difference in meaning? Yes, there is a little difference. Let's look at what that looks like. So they are both obligations, but they're different. So let's look at how they're different. Must. This obligation comes from your feelings. You feel it is important and that you need to do it, but it is more personal. It's your personal feelings. Have to. This obligation means you have no choice because it comes from the situation beyond your control, not your personal feelings. So must is personal feelings and have to is it comes from the situation. So let's look at these examples again. Must. I must get a new job. I can't do this anymore. The meaning here is it's important to me to get another job because I feel I cannot keep working here. I don't like it at all. It's my feelings. I have to get it. I must, get a new job because I don't want to do this anymore. So it's about feelings. But let's look at have to, the example with have to. I have to get a new job. I can't do this anymore. This one is slightly different. The meaning here is that there is no choice. It is based on the situation beyond my control, not my feelings, but the situation. For example, maybe it's because of stress, I have to get a new job, or it could be I have allergies to the chemicals I use when I clean, etc. So I have to, it's beyond my control, and it's based on the situation. Okay, let's look at another example. Must. We must sell our car before we buy another one. Have to. We have to sell our car before we buy another one. They have a slightly different meaning between the two. So let's look more closely at those two examples. Must. We must sell our car before we buy another one. The meaning here is personal. Remember, must is personal. So it's important to us to sell our first car so that we have all the money we need to buy the new one. But, we could buy the new one first if we wanted to, but it is personally important to us not to do that. We want to sell our car first, maybe because we are money conscious. So that's our feeling, our personal choice. But with have to, it's not our personal choice. It's based on the situation. We have to sell our car before we buy another one. Maybe there's no choice. I mean, in the sense that it's based on the situation. Maybe we have to have the money from the first car to pay for the second one. So if we don't sell our first car, we won't have enough money to buy the new one. I do want to point out that have to and must both indicate no choice, but one is based on personal no choice, and the other is based on situation, no choice. So have to feels a little stronger. A brief pause to tell you about how these videos are created. If you're interested, they were used with the Doodly software. So if you're interested in using Doodly for your personal projects, you can get a lifetime membership that starts at about $39 US. There's an affiliate link down below in the description box if you're interested, and you can read more about that there. And also don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you like these kinds of videos. Okay, back to the video. So a few notes for you about have to and must. It's more common to use have to in spoken English. Very, very common. Written English is more formal, so must is good there, and spoken English is more informal, so have to is more common. So you will rarely hear must in spoken English because it's too formal. And you will always hear a native English speaker use have to in conversations. But don't be confused because in formal situations you can speak must. You can use it in spoken English. And that would be situations around laws and rules. Like, for example, you must be on time for the meeting, your boss says. That's spoken English and it's a rule. He's allowed to say that, it's formal. Also, you can use must if your boss says something like, you must finish the report by the end of the day. And that means you have no choice, right? It's his personal feeling that you must finish that report. You must have a driver's license to drive a car, the police would say to you. And you must show your passport before boarding the airplane. The stewardess at the front might say to you at the airport. But these are all rules in formal situations, so it's easy for you to remember that must is formal. But if you do hear must in a conversation, remember it might have a different meaning. So we rarely use it in conversations about obligations. But remember, that's the reason modals are difficult. It's because they have different uses. So you might hear people using must in a conversation, but it rarely has anything to do with talking about obligations. Hear the guy saying, oh, there must be a parking spot somewhere. So when in doubt, use have to, because that's what native English speakers do. So I have to go. Bye. I hope you enjoyed learning about modals of obligation and advice. Thank you for watching an English grammar video by Melissa Carroll, my English teacher. Don't forget to subscribe.